Thank you, Chairman. I appreciate the panel being here. Particular welcome to Mr. Friedman. Rhode Island has two ports that we're investing in and proud of, Port and Quonset, and we're the home of Morin Shipping Agencies, which is one of the world's best ship servicing agencies. So we're keenly interested in ports, and I'm interested in your take on what sea level rise infrastructure impacts our ports are looking at.
I think our ports are keenly interested and concerned about sea level rise and what they can do in partnership with local, state, and federal government to enhance resiliency, as we heard Mr. Cochran speaking to earlier. I think we would look toward this WERDA bill to increase our ability to work in innovative ways with the Army Corps of Engineers. I think you usually find that a lot of the new and interesting ideas tend to bubble up from those of us who are on the ground at our local ports and communities, and we need the ability to sit down with our Army Corps districts and work together on those solutions. We are engaged in those discussions with the Buffalo District of the Corps, which oversees Cleveland. Believe it or not, we've had some coastal resiliency issues in Cleveland. Superstorm Sandy did a tremendous amount of damage to our breakwater and other structures in our port, and so we're looking at ways we can use dredge material, for example, to fortify our port.
Is it fair to say that the concern of America's ports about sea level rise goes beyond the actual seashore itself, that you can raise piers and seawalls and so forth, but if the sea is infiltrating through, for instance, water systems and bubbling up behind, if it's flooding access roads that are necessary to get goods in and out of the ports, those are matters that are of equal concern to the actual shoreline itself. Is that correct?
No question, Senator. I think our ports are literally on the front lines of this issue, and they're very concerned about the upland impacts of sea level rise, as well as maybe being inundated right on the docks. There's no question that all our ports are focused on that question, and I think they're all working very hard to figure out, how do we mitigate going forward.
Ms. Uffner, you're here on behalf of all counties, but if I could direct your attention to coastal counties, could you tell us what you're hearing from coastal counties about the infrastructure hazards and risks and problems and challenges that they're seeing related to sea level rise and storm surges and so forth?
Well, it's much even broader than sea level rise and storm surges. We're definitely getting the flooding in the coastal counties. I also work very closely with our Gulf States Counties and Parishes Caucus, and especially with the hurricanes that have come through this past fall. They're increasingly focusing on how to address those issues because the weather events have been getting more severe, and the population growth within those communities makes it even more essential that the communities can address these issues at the local level.
So my view on this is that this is a problem that coastal communities face, counties and municipalities, that very often those counties and those municipalities don't have a lot of resources to do the planning. I see your head nodding for the record. Yes, good. It's also my view that a lot of the FEMA mapping has proven itself to be wildly inaccurate. And so you have counties that are counting on the federal government for planning as to what sea level rise and flood risk looks like, and they're being given bad information, which puts it again back on the community to try to reach its own better planning process, but without the resources, it's really hard to ask a local community to take on a task like that. Is that a fair description of the problem as you see it as well?
It is. Counties derive a large part of their income from property taxes, and states set the limit of how we can even raise property taxes. So it sets an ugly cycle of how do we fund for something, how do we strengthen our local communities, and that's why the federal state partnership is so valuable to us.
Yeah. Well, I've got just a few seconds left. Let me just make one point to my colleagues. I think that as we are beginning to address these WRDA issues, one of the areas in which we can become more efficient and more helpful to the Army Corps would be to try to find a good, honorable, and transparent way for Congress and this committee to be able to assert its own priorities in the process. It concerns me that we shovel projects in one side of the WRDA bill, and we shovel money in the other side of the WRDA bill, and how the Army Corps of Engineers connects that money to those projects is a giant black hole. And I think we need to fix that. I know we've been through a problem of earmarks that received a lot of justified criticism. Our response was to abandon this responsibility entirely. I think that was an overreaction, and that we can and should in this committee try to frame out an honorable, transparent, proper way for these priorities to be met under our supervision rather than just throw it off to the Army Corps bureaucracy. Hope that statement was not unwelcome, and I appreciate the extra time.
It was very welcome. Thank you very much, Senator Whitehouse.